Today we're going to learn about verifying inverses. Verifying inverses means how do we know that two functions f and g are in fact inverses of each other. So if you're given f of x and if you're given g of x, how do you know if you have inverses? This is basically the fourth step of the problem solving model. Once you find the inverse, well, don't you have to go back and check? Well, this is the check, right? So for example, if in the last problem we found that the inverse of 5x is 1 over 5x. Okay, well, f of x, let's call g of x 5x, and we'll call f of x 1 over 5x and see what happens. So let's see. So for example, we know that f of x equals 1 over 5x and g of x equals 5x. So the question is, are f of x and g of x inverses of each other? That's the big question. So how do we find out if they're inverses of each other? Well, you can simply do this. Find f of g of x and g of f of x. And they both should be equal to 0. Oh, not 0, should be equal to x. So if we find f of g of x and g of f of x, they should both be equal to x. If they're both equal to x, then that means that f of x and g of x are indeed inverses of each other. Let me give you a minute to copy this, and then we'll go look at our first example. But let's first do this. Let's first verify this. Okay, let's see. So what is f of g of x? Well, f is my outside function, so I'm going to write it first, 1 over 5 x. But then I need to replace the g of x inside f of x, so this becomes 1 over 5 times g of x. Well, what is g of x? G of x is 5x. Alright, well, what happens if I multiply 1 over 5 times 5x? The 5's cancel out. So what am I left with? I'm left with 1 times x, which is x. So that works. F of g of x is x. This means that f is the inverse of g of x. Now we do the opposite. We find g of f of x to see if that works. So let me erase this part right here, and then I'll find g of f of x. Let's see, g of f of x. Well, what is g of x? G of x is 5x. But I'm trying to find g of f of x, so I'm going to replace the x with f of x. What is f of x? F of x is 1 over 5x. What happens when you multiply 5 and 1 over 5? The 5's cancel out and you're left with 1x, which is the same as x. So both f of x, f of g of x, and g of f of x give you x as the result. So this means that f of x and g of x are inverses of each other. We verified it. Right. Let me give you a minute to copy this, and then we'll do a couple examples together.